Zymonetics and Beyond.
All right, so hello to those who are still here and to those who are watching us online who weren't able to make it today. I am thrilled to be sitting with Tesla, who does some amazing things. And I know that over the last 2 years through COVID, when a lot of people were sitting around wondering what was coming next, you were busy creating what was coming next. And I know you were invited to steer 2 very vital projects in the healthcare realm. And one was Canada Health 2030, and that was about what the social contract will look like in Canada, basically with personalized healthcare. And the other identified the top 5 Canadian health challenges with global stakeholders. And you were featured as a company to watch. You've been in Forbes, Business Insider, Afrotech, Business Wire, all over the place. So we're going to touch on some of the reasons why and what you're doing today. And I know that you're doing a lot of work on psychedelics and the changes that need to happen and the intersection between personalized healthcare and psychedelics. So I'm interested in hearing about your journey and why that's all important and what brought you here.
Thanks, Tracy. So my name's Tesla. I am the CEO of Zymonetics. We are Canada's first accountable care organization that's with a focus on personalized medicine. What that means is we are a bunch of clinical researcher educators that are intent on hacking the system, both internally as the internal customer and externally as the providers of care and executors of research in the realm. Over the last couple of years, like you mentioned, during COVID, I was invited to speak and steer a national conversation on personalized healthcare with the Copenhagen Institute of Future Studies and Roche and multiple stakeholders in both the private and public sector to talk about how to engage Canadians in a new social contract for health focused on personalized medicine. Zymonetics, my company, was featured as a company to watch, largely because of my tenure in advancing healthcare portfolios, disruptive healthcare portfolios, but also because I'm the only one in the world to receive a portfolio of these, what we call advanced biohacking technologies, as investments in my well-being. And that's largely because of what we know and what I know around navigating market access for disruptive to be adopted in Canada.
You're basically using yourself as the proof and adapting all of these technologies and ideas.
So my own personal story and the reason I'm involved in this space in the first place is I was the head of one of the largest orthopedic devices companies here in Canada. I led the business division called Clinical Therapies, Biologics and Spine for Smith & Nephew Orthopedics at the time, which is now called Bioventus. And I realized that there was tons of disparities in healthcare here, especially around compensation for our physicians here who want to do what we call minimal access procedures. They weren't being compensated as well as their US counterparts. So that was one challenge. I also realized that we had no infrastructure for funding disruptive technologies in our market. Canada's very focused on pills and surgery as the things that we fund. And then in acknowledging that there were all of these disparities that were happening, I also had my own health challenge and subluxated my hip and had a major life-altering injury where I realized, oh my goodness, somebody needs to be the anchor for change. And I started to really take a deep dive into a quest of what were the tools that I needed to be able to sustain my own resilience and strength, especially post-injury. I had a hip I subluxated my hip and had a labral tear, and I'll tell you, it was the worst injury that I've ever experienced in my life. The pandemic here in Canada is, if you have a hip injury as an elder, within 12 to 18 months, you're dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So with that injury, I went on a deep dive around, what are the types of innovation that I could align myself with that would support me to heal conservatively. And being in the realm of orthopedics and knowing what was available as far as, biologic injections at the time for healing, I knew that there wasn't that much out there. And so I was able to really look at innovation like advanced clinical therapies to support me in.
So you were looking on a global level what was available or what was out there potentially.
Exactly. In the realm of orthopedics and advanced healing, there's lots of really novel technologies for post-operative care, and a lot of them that what I'd like to say enhance the end user's biofield.
Okay.
So it uses biophysics as the way to deliver the therapy. And by that I mean technologies like electromagnetic stimulation or pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. These are all types of tools that...
I know how just for the layperson in medical, how innovative are those? Are those accepted now and been going on for a long time? Are those...
Yeah, so there's all of these types of advanced clinical therapies, a lot of them are proven and have really good science, but they haven't been able to make it into the masses because of barriers to funding. And this is really where the change needs to come in, and what Zymonetics is proposing as a new way to fund care is to really look at bringing what we call value-based care modeling to how we fund innovation. And so through my own journey of acquiring this pulsed electromagnetic field device that's got maybe over 500,000 articles on it in the literature, I was able to put myself back together again from a hip injury without surgery. I used that. I received a vibration plate that's in the realm of advanced, sports. And I also received a portfolio of biometric infrared saunas that measure your vital signs while you're in it.
Wow. Yeah,
so in receiving those tools, I was able to put myself on a treatment protocol in collaboration with my doctor, by the way. My doctor's an advanced pain specialist. And we put we put me on a protocol.
I remember talking to you about this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When you were, I guess you were in the beginning stages.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I worked with my doctor to put me on a protocol that supported me in getting myself, healed from this hip injury. I call it the shake, the bake, and the wake. Anyway, the evolution of this injury was such that I started to look at the market and go, okay, if I went through this whole injury and received these tools, how much could the market benefit from, having these types of tools integrated into more people's homes? And what would that need to look like as an innovation in funding care with stakeholders? And that's really been the journey that I've been on over the last few years around Zymonetics, is putting a team together of clinicians, of researchers that include, geneticists, doctors, naturopathic, and allopathic, health coaches, and, creative minds, really, that can support this conversation with multiple stakeholders and what we need to do to adopt a model like this.
Okay, so there's two things I want to ask you. One is, in a minute, about how psychedelics comes into all that and personalized medicine. But first, when you're mentioning the stakeholders and what needs to be done in terms of funding, can I ask you how the investors here, how people here, how Canadians, how people in this space can help move this forward?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Right now, Zymonetics, we moved from consulting in some of these larger projects nationally, and now we're looking at, how do we launch a multi-site proof of concept inside of a learning collaboration model that, will support us in in demonstrating what it is that we know is possible in a therapeutic area, and will support us in, informing payer decisions around this type of care being very relevant. And so I...
Just how stakeholders or
Yeah,
people
so
interested
what
in
we're
funding or moving forward.
Yeah, what we're doing right now is a social impact investment model that will allow stakeholders to invest on behalf of their organizations and lead what we're speaking to by example.
Beautiful.
So we're launching this as a health justice education model that anchor organizations can work with us on integrating for their own employees, and then we work internally to work through the kinks inside of our clinical sites while we collaborate to scale the solution up and out to the rest of the market.
Talking about vulnerable populations, social justice, elder care,
Sure.
and how it impacts how we need to, I guess, fill in those gaps and how we can impact.
One of the things that we acknowledged around Zymonetics and the future of personalized healthcare in Canada is that the big battles that need to be won are around how we provide access to the most marginalized and racialized, because they tend to be left out of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And being a woman of color, I'm also very much aware of those nuances, but I'm also very much aware of where, how those gaps can be an advantage to making personalized healthcare really become the evolution of care. Health justice, the racialized and marginalized, if we look at the things that we can implement today to really move the pendulum of care in a direction that supports, the upliftment of a group, that can go a long way to driving change for all other comers. And so what we've looked at for Zymonetics are some of the policy gaps around personalized healthcare. One of them is, regenerative medicine in Canada. Dr. Taylor earlier spoke about ACORN, and, it's a big challenge here in Canada that as Canadians we can't get stem cell injections. And so we've looked at ways to deliver a research model that will allow physicians to enroll themselves and their patients to a stem cell study where we can have our physicians be trained in a social impact market like the Caribbean.
Beautiful.
That mirrors the Caribbean, that mirrors our social infrastructure as far as benefits and resources that we allocate to care from a single payer. These types of policy gaps can really be addressed if we start to think about how to connect the dots on some of the gaps that we see right here in vulnerable communities.
Beautiful.
And we think we can lead that as a national conversation targeting a population like Canadians of Afro-Amerindian descent.
And it's interesting that the conversation, the focus on the personalized healthcare actually brings us to that as well, right? To filling in the gaps with some of the marginalized groups and challenges that we've had in the healthcare system that have not been addressed. So looking at it through that lens actually, is more personal, for all the different groups that are being missed out right now as well, as the individual.
Personalized healthcare is the future, and there's multiple ways that we can take to get there, but personalized healthcare is the future, and once we get it on that level, then in a nation like this where the federation is the corporation, it makes sense to make it so that we can amplify the call to action.
Absolutely.
For us to get access to these tools, but then that also means that we have to take accessibility to the nth degree. And, what we're saying at Zymonetics is that we have an opportunity and the roadmap and the tools and the clinicians who are ready to lead what an integrative
and to educate
model.
each other and the other doctors and
exactly.
healthcare providers.
How we can train each other and then within the context of that training, be ready to scale up and out to the rest of the market. I have a team of over 3,000 doctors that I lead globally around this conversation. That we've already done our research, our focus group research. They're willing to participate, and right now we're in conversations with �၀𝐞𝐝 as an insurer here in Canada. That it makes sense for them to pay attention to what a group like us is saying and what we're willing to opt into as an investigator-initiated study.
And can you talk a little bit about the integration of psychedelic medicine and how that's being seen and what the challenges are in that, and on the international level, what's good, what's bad, what you're seeing in the space?
Sure. Yep. Last year I took an interim CEO role with a psychedelics company and in novel drug discovery around psychedelics, and it really opened me up to all of the opportunities that are in the realm of psychedelics as the nascent area of healthcare that, to be honest, I feel like everybody should be paying attention to, because right now it gets to write its own rules around how people opt in. And so I'd say that right now I'm at the intersection of psychedelics and advanced technology. And how I look at psychedelics is that we know through the research that it's a complete regeneration of your neural synapses that are reconnecting, that have been damaged because of our 3D lived experience, right? Trauma. And so if your brain cells if you're experiencing neurogenesis of your neural pathways, then what's possible to experience a, neuro or regeneration of your physical body as well. And so what we would like to do is connect the dots on how those two things intersect and put on a show of what's possible around, hacking the brain and then, of course, hacking the mind to suit. And then do it in a way that informs payer decisions, right? So if there's enough physician oversight and demand in the market for something like this, then insurance companies are going to pay attention. And we've looked at how to really connect the A to Z of creating that ecosystem.
And how is that on a global level? Are you finding that conversation? Is it similar to the conversation with the medical cannabis? Is it following along the same lines as medical cannabis, or is it more challenging? Are you getting, what kind of reactions do you get from the mainstream?
Well, you got to reach the seekers and fish where the fish are, right? So for the most part, I don't fish where I'm not going to get any, I'm throwing a line out and I'm not getting any response. It doesn't make any sense.
But you deal with major stakeholders in the global level, and so what are they saying? Or
absolutely. I mean, you know what? On the personalized healthcare and preventative healthcare side, that's one conversation that I've been having with multiple conventional stakeholders, and on the traditional pharma side. Everybody's ready to have this conversation. I think Canada as a market is an innovative market. We're interested in innovation, so we're ready to have these conversations. On the psychedelic side, that's the other thing too. I think that Canada is going to be a real leader in the realm of psychedelics because we're already having the conversation around personalized healthcare as a new social contract for health. So to me, the two go hand in hand. And right now, I'm most interested in working with stakeholders in this space that want to put some money where their mouth is around how to drive change in this area, and want to work with a group of interested clinicians who know how to have the nuanced conversation that speaks insurance, finance, medtech, pharma, and
all those
and
languages.
physician.
I know you have a lot of different languages.
Exactly. So that's what it is. And I think everything that I've seen here today, I know that Zymonetics is really going to be on the cusp of the gamification of healthcare and all of the nuances that brings.
Yeah. So essentially, I think anybody in this medtech space watching this or here today really should be having a conversation with you about all the conversations you've been having and where everything's going and how you can how they can advance this and we can all advance to that, especially in Canada, that personalized healthcare space as a model, you know, on a global level too. So, yeah, amazing work. So, yeah, this lady is a Canadian superstar.
Thanks,
So-
Tracy. It was really a pleasure to speak
Yeah,
to you.
same. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I look forward to watching more about your journey.